What's up, YouTube? Welcome to another episode of Scales 13. Today's video is going to be the fourth episode of Scaly Thoughts. The subject that today's episode is going to be about is finding your niche in the reptile hobby. Now, what this means is there's different skills that people have either from a secondary hobby or from their professions that they could use to advance their reptile care and husbandry. It can help the keeper have more fun with the hobby as well, where they really feel like they have something that makes them stand out and as a part of the community. So the first subject I want to bring up is constructing enclosures. Now, of course, outside of fish tanks and enclosures that are honestly becoming more of a outdated way of keeping reptiles, there's plenty of commercially available PVC and wooden enclosures that you can find on the market. However, there's people who have different skills that can help you set up a custom enclosure that can help you get the enclosure that you really want for your pet reptile. And the cool thing about this is not only will it help you save money if you buy the materials and build it yourself, or if you get a contractor or somebody to help you build it, but also it'll help you get the enclosure that you want rather than just settling for what the enclosure company offers as far as their sizes. I can tell you there's many times where I was shopping around for enclosures and I've come across a lot of companies that only go as big as a 4x2x2. Now, of course, as you know, if you've been watching my channel for a while, I keep monitor lizards. And the thing is, a 4x2x2 is a good standard for dwarf monitors as the smallest enclosure that you can buy. But of course, you have to add a dig box and add some different modifications to it to make it comfortable for the animal. But for the vast majority of monitors, a 4x2x2 is simply too small. So if you want to get something bigger, so that way you can accommodate the space that the animal needs, you're either going to have to buy a bigger enclosure if there's one available, or you can customize it and make it yourself, or you can make the enclosure with the help of a friend who also has one of these skills. Now, these skills come from people who usually have a hand in building things with these materials themselves. Now, the professions that would help you out with this would be contractors, people who have skills that involve building different additions to homes, and licensed electricians, people who work with woodworking, people who can work with their hands and really know the materials and how to cut and measure and put different things together that can easily build a piece of furniture or the enclosure that you would need for your reptile. I have a few friends in the hobby that work in sawmills and brick masons and different things like that. And these guys build some of the best enclosures I've ever seen in my life. The awesome thing is these guys understand the different things that you have to do to make a house safe from the elements. So they understand different things that you would need as far as being able to seal the enclosure to keep the humidity in or to keep it from breaking down over time. They understand the R values and how that would keep the temperature stable within the enclosure without fluctuation that would make the animal sick. They also know how to wire up an enclosure properly and be able to put in all the electrical equipment for any type of lighting that you want to put in, thermostats, radiant heat panels, anything that you would need in order to heat the enclosure properly and safely. And that's one of the reasons why I like talking about people who are doing it as a profession more than a hobby when it comes to constructing enclosures, because if you're dealing with anything that involves electrical equipment or power tools, especially hand saws and things like that, it's better to get somebody working with you who is licensed and trained, who really know what they're doing. So that way, even if they're just helping you build the enclosure and they're teaching you, there's a person you're working with who knows about all the safety aspects. That way you don't harm yourself when you're building one of these enclosures or those around you. They also know different little tips and tricks that you can do to save money from going to the pet stores and spending all this money on all these different materials and stuff that you think is giving you every single thing you need for the reptile. And in some aspects, for some smaller species, it may give you what you need, but you can get more bang for your buck with getting the raw materials from different places like Home Depot and Lowe's and places that sell these raw materials that if you cut and refine them and use them yourselves, you can make something better where rather than just giving this animal a nice home, it basically has a little mini mansion to run around in that has all the different little amenities that would need to survive and thrive within captivity. Another profession that would help you in reptile keeping would be any type of veterinarian or vet tech experience. I've actually known quite a few breeders in the hobby that are veterinarians or vet techs. One of the vets that I go to, Dr. Stencil, actually bred leopard geckos and snakes for a long period of time before he even went to vet school. Also, if you guys are familiar with leopard geckos, Sasabeck Reptiles also worked as a vet tech. And what this does is it not only gives you a structured form of education to help you understand the biology of the animal, but it also gives you access to see what happens in the medical rooms when these animals get sick and what types of treatments, equipment, tools they use to figure out what's wrong with the animals. Instruments such as ultrasounds and small things like different syringes that you would use to feed certain animals, different techniques that you would also use to get an animal hydrated that's on its last leg if you're trying to pump the animal up with some fluids and get the animal to spring back to life. These things are not readily seen by people who are simply working in either a pet shop or are just keeping reptiles at home. So if you have a person who's working in the vet industry that has experience working with reptiles, I highly suggest that you keep that person close in case you ever need help or some advice. Now, of course, I'm not talking about, and I have to backpedal on this because there's a huge divide between vets and reptile keepers within the hobby. Now, I'm talking about veterinarians. I'm not talking about the veterinarians who went through a general veterinarian education and only covered exotics in a very small area where they have limited experience dealing with the animals. I'm talking about the vet techs and veterinarians that are passionate about reptile keeping, that were into reptiles either before they went to school or after, and they specialize in the health and treatment of these animals specifically. I'm talking about the people who they wanted to become a vet so they can help and take care of reptiles. These are the people that I'm talking about. And I understand they're hard to find because, of course, most people, of course, are going to own cats and dogs. And the majority of people that are taking their animals to the vet are not going to be reptile keepers. However, there are experienced exotic vets out here that can help you with the health and welfare of your animal, and I highly suggest that you keep them around. For example, one of my friends, Exotics with LK, if you guys have ever followed the Instagram channel, Tyranitar the Aki, he's kept quite a few Aki minors that he's adopted before that had some health issues and things like that. And what he actually did was he did a study on Odatra, which is the order that Aki minors belong to. He basically ran a study on animals that had gout to try to pinpoint where the issue was coming from, as far as, is it coming from their diet, is it coming from their genetics, like where is this common health problem coming from. And it's really cool because everything that he learned in school really helps him not only understand the animal's metabolism and its biology, but it also helps him put together the proper criteria to conduct research that's actually credible for the reptile hobby and to help us as keepers take care of our animals and help them live longer lives and prevent different health problems such as gout from harming our animals. Now, there's one other profession that really helps a person who wants to breed reptiles, and This one can be a little bit controversial. However, if you're doing it the right way where you really care about the animals, you can actually produce healthy animals and find ways to keep multiple animals, but keep them safely without without the sheer number of animals that you're taking care of becoming a burden on not only you, the keeper, but also on the care that you're offering the animals. And that is farming. So I'll give you an example. So one of the monitor lizard breeders that I talk to, actually a few of them, breed their own feeders. And where they got the experience from is they grew up on farms and their parents had chickens and different animals and things like that. And so the different aspects of farming doesn't necessarily mean that you just know how to produce a whole bunch of animals. So you're just going to take your reptiles and produce these huge numbers quickly so you can sell them fast. It's really just knowing how to take care of multiple animals and how to set up systems where all of them are getting what they need. All of them are getting water, all of them are getting food. And the thing is, I'm looking at this more in the aspect of how are you breeding your own feeders. Like one of the guys I know, BH Varanus, he's done African soft furs before. GIP Varanid, he did, is currently doing quail. So of course that means he's getting quail chicks, quail eggs. He has blackthroat monitors, ackies, sand monitors, a whole bunch of different animals that will readily enjoy what he's producing as food for them. So take in consideration farmers when you're looking at that profession, because they can find ways to house multiple creatures in order to have the benefit of keeping them alive and producing more. And of course, there's always more humane ways of farming than the stereotypical idea that we see that seems to be the narrative that's given to us on a regular basis. Now, this fourth subject is going to talk more about people who have different skills in art that they can use within the reptile keeping. And what I mean is there's different forms of art that people can use, such as people who work with ceramics can make different types of custom hides for the enclosure that can have the look and feel of real rock, but can be lighter and safer for the reptiles that you're keeping. And you can make them in custom shapes so that way they not only fit into the enclosure, but they're the proper size for the animal to hide in. There's other artists out there that are good at digital art. A channel that I watched a while ago, I haven't talked to this guy in a while, but he had a channel called Project Pet. And this guy was based out of the UK, and he actually worked on some of the scenes for The Lord of the Rings and other big films. And his channel was actually really good at making YouTube videos. Man, I wish I had his skill. His editing was absolutely on point, and the fact that he also was pretty good at working with his hands. He made awesome videos showing how he does his diets, showing how he would put together and build different enclosures, and just presenting them on the videos really made a very well quality video showcasing all the other skills that he had as well. Another skill that people don't tend to think about, which actually is a whole nother hobby in itself, is horticulture. People who are good at growing plants and knowing what plants need as far as the different species and which ones grow in different environments and how sturdy they are, and knowing all the conditions, the soil pH, and all those things you need, that would be great for bioactive keeping and setting up terrariums where you have live plants with your reptiles. If you know anybody who has this skill, I highly suggest that you talk to them if you want to get into bioactive keeping, because they can open your eyes to different variables that go into bioactive keeping. Honestly, I really love that part of the hobby because it gives you the aspect of taking care of a little mini environment as a whole, rather than just taking care of the one animal that lives within the enclosure. People who work in horticulture are also well versed in different types of lighting and all the different type of light spectrums that you'll need in order to keep specific species of plants alive and to help keep them growing and producing the colors that you want within the leaves, and if you have any flowering plants within the enclosure, so that we really get that aesthetic beauty to your enclosure while keeping your animal in a safe and healthy environment as well. Well, guys, I hope you like this fourth episode of Skelly Thoughts. I really wanted to bring in perspective all the different things that go into reptile keeping that you guys can pick up from everyday hobbies and everyday professions as well. If you know anybody who's a contractor, a veterinarian, a farmer, or your local artist that works in sculpture, digital art, a person who keeps plants, is into horticulture, I highly suggest you talk to these people if you want to apply any of these skills as I've listed to your reptile keeping. I guarantee you it's going to benefit you if there's any type of way that they can help and give some advice. Everyone have a great day. Peace.